We are going to be 10 billion by 2050. We are going to live on a planet 4 degrees hotter. We are going to have more mouths and less food. We are going to have less land and more pollution. But we crossed oceans and we defeated diseases. But we went to the moon and we blossomed the desert. Because we are innovators. We are farmers. We are makers. We are dreamers. And we are going to gather and discuss, create and inspire minds and souls. Because we are feeding our future.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, my name is Leonardo Tiago. I'm 15 years old, I'm Italian, and I'm currently studying at the American School of Milan. It is my pleasure to be here speaking to you at this Seed and Chips event, having the pleasure of introducing the power of big data on food. Firstly, I would like to briefly introduce the term. Big data refers to immensely large data sets, so vast that conventional means of data processing are rendered inadequate. The sheer size and complexity of these sets allow us to discover intricate patterns within seemingly random events. When it comes to food, big data could bring about significant improvements to our societies. For starters, it has the potential to improve overall well-being by unearthing new patterns between diet and health, linking specific foods to health concerns or diseases. What's truly incredible is that this could be done anywhere from an individual level to a global scale. However, where big data could drastically improve the world of today, as well as that of tomorrow, is in the production of food. Big data allows us to predict anything from possible product yields to the most likely financial circumstances of farms, making the food industry a safer bet for smaller businesses while improving efficiency for all. As the website of Centaur Analytics so eloquently states, monitoring and analyzing data is the first step. The real power lies in using it. I thereby yield the floor to all of our wonderful speakers here today so that they may lead us to a healthier and more efficient tomorrow. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I hope I get the same applause as Leonardo. Thank you very much, Seeds and Chips. I'm very happy to be here today with you, sharing how my company is using big data. And I'm Isabel Hoffman, and the company is Telspec. And you probably know that, maybe you don't, but the most valuable resource right now in the world is actually data. It's not oil, it's data. So think about it. A few years ago, if you asked what was the most valuable resource, you likely would say oil. Now, because oil was the most valuable resource, we had a company called Standard Oil, that was torn apart because of antitrust, because they dominated the oil production. Today, we don't think about doing that to Google, or to Apple, or to Microsoft, or to Amazon. Those companies are providing benefit to all of us. How would we Google something? How would we find something on the internet without Google? I would be lost. But if you look at it, what's happening is that every activity is becoming digital. Today, Google tells us what people search, and they sell that data. Apple tells us what people listen to and many other things. Microsoft, with the acquisition of Skype, is telling us to whom people speak with. And so on goes on. That data is being sold. And when we sell data, individual or aggregated data, there's always gains and loss. There's always problems with it, and there's always advantages. And that's what we'll see with food as well. So what's happening with how people eat? What's happening with that data, that information? And how are we going to capture that information? What they eat, when they eat, where they're eating, what ingredients they prefer, how we're growing it, and so on. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about TellSpec, because we're part of that big data of what people eat. My company, TellSpec, is really trying to, it's a data company, and we're trying to bring about trust in food. In other words, most of us don't trust food. We look at it and say, maybe the label is not right, or they forgot to put some ingredient, or sometimes we don't even understand the ingredients. There's so many different names constantly changing. High fructose corn syrup could be glucose, fructose, or syrup simply. I mean, there's a lot of ingredients out there we don't know, so there is a lack of trust from all of us. And the only way we can bring about that trust is actually to be able to scan the food at the consumer level. So imagine that all of us would have a small scanner integrated in a phone or not in a phone that could scan the food and tell you, oh, it has a certain carcinogen, something that provokes cancer. Like acrylamide. For instance, potato chips, when they are created because they have a lot of starch, at high temperatures, they produce a chemical called acrylamide that is actually carcinogenic. Now, all of us would not like to have that carcinogen in our food, okay? So how do we do that? And so we proposed, as a company, to offer a real-time, non-destructive food analysis to the consumer. This is, what I have here is actually our enterprise scanner, not yet our consumer scanner, but a lot of consumers are using it. And let me tell you how we use the data so that you understand it. Okay, so this is a spectrometer. So nothing new in terms of spectroscopy. It's old technology, 45 years old. We read light, we read the reflection of the molecules. We throw light to the molecules of the food, we receive that light back, it travels at a different velocity, we count the number of photons, and we count the energy for each photon, and we have information, a unique fingerprint of the molecules of the food. What is different about this is that we decoupled the computational analysis from here. Typically, spectrometers are large, they have a computer and there's a spectrometer. We send all that information to the cloud. And so by doing that, we have infinite amount of capability of actually computational capability. So we have developed the first comprehensive solution for cloud-based spectroscopy. How does that happen? Well, very simple. What you see in the cloud there has an analysis engine, which is chemometrics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, crunching in, crunching in, crunching in. And what you see below is several databases that we use. Databases that have something about what the user is doing, where the user is, chemical databases for analysis, and databases of scan. In other words, we build a database with this machine by correlating, mathematically correlating, what one would do in a lab versus what this thing sees. So in a acrylamide example, we would be cooking potatoes with different types of potatoes, different types of oils, putting those potatoes into a lab, a wet lab, measuring the acrylamide, scanning those potatoes, and making a mathematical correlation between what we see in the lab and what we see in the near-infrared of the potato. That's how we would do a module for detection of acrylamide. In fact, we're doing that right now, by the way. But we don't believe that we are the only sensor and that we should be the only one selling sensors. So we are integrating in a cloud spectroscopy all sorts of other sensors from all sorts of other companies. It's difficult because we have to integrate data, their data, and it's difficult because it's not necessarily the same range, the same visible range, but it's possible. We are undergoing right now our third project in this area. So what kind of applications do we use the big data here? And just to give you a little bit of a background just before I go here, in the analysis engines, most our algorithms, and we have 357 different modules. Most of them are relatively complex, but not huge. We have two really big ones. One is for detection of gluten, and the other one is for detection of melamine. Melamine, because we are about to launch a melamine detection for baby food, baby formula in China. So we have a very large algorithm or module for melamine in our cloud. But otherwise, yes, this probably could have been brought to a CPU, but the melamine and the gluten would not be able to run in a CPU. In fact, the gluten has taken us more than a week to actually crunch in the model. So just to give you an idea, and in terms of data, the scan data, we have over 4 million scans in our database. So this is big. This is becoming really big, okay? And it's nothing. It's like a little tip in the iceberg. So one of the things we do, we have currently, is users optimizing harvests. And an example, we have a consortium of olive growers in Andalusia, in Spain. There's about 100,000 of them. And they're using our scanner to optimize the time when to pick the olive. And it's kind of interesting, because I learned this. The best time to pick the olive for the best olive oil is when the olive has the most amount of fat. Well, that's obvious. But the leaves have the most amount of nitrogen. I did not know that. So they scan the leaves, they scan the olive, and then when those two parameters are optimized, that's when the best harvest takes place. We have a few other groups, like one actually in Italy using this for wine production. So it's a very interesting way of using this data with modules. We also started a project for vertical farming. And this is kind of interesting. So of course, vertical farming needs to sell the concept quite a bit. And the question is really what you're producing as nutritional as what we can produce in conventional ways? And so this group needed to have constant measurements for the little leafy greens that they were growing, so that they could prove that, in fact, what they're growing is, in fact, as good, if not better, than what you can grow conventionally. So we have our scanner being integrated into this scenario. This is one of my favorite photographs. It's a two-photograph. I'm actually behind there, in the middle. This is actually at one of our clients, the supermarket Auchan in France. We are scanning fruits for fruit quality. Auchan is one of our clients. And what we do is as follows, and I actually encourage you to come and see the booth because I have the app here. We take in the fruit, and we have developed parameters such as acidity, Brix, firmness, and juice ratio. How firm is the fruit? What is the juice ratio of an orange? What is the acidity, and what is the Brix? Based on those 4 parameters, Auchan can make a decision on whether that fruit is sent back to the producer, because maybe it's not ripe enough or overripe, or whether that fruit is only going to last one more day and therefore should be given to a food bank, or that fruit should go to a supermarket. So this is helping this supermarket control the waste, because a lot of times without this, the food is just sent and arrives to the hypermarkets and it's already damaged. Another application we have, and this actually was, we've done 5 projects now for this client in Holland. They are a very large distributor of flour, and they outsource the flour worldwide. And flour is contaminated with all sorts of real bad stuff, such as melamine, urea, and hair, which they call feather protein. So in China, hair of the prisoners is grounded, and the protein is extracted and then put into flour. It's a bit mind-boggling, but it happens because flour is cheaper than making this process. So we detect things like, how much urea, how much feta protein, how much melamine in all sorts of flours. We're doing a 3rd job now, actually, for a similar company, but on top of those 3 parameters, we're detecting the moisture, and we are hoping to start detecting the effect of mold, aflatoxin, in this. We have not done that yet, but we hope to go there to actually get to the point where we can detect aflatoxin. For those of you that don't know what aflatoxin is, because of the climate change problem, this is probably the most important problem and the most serious problem we have in our world in terms of food due to climate change. There is areas where we're growing food that suddenly have a lot of rain or no rain at all, and then a lot of rain again. It's unpredictable, so mold grows in a lot of these light covering crops, such as corn, peanuts, and all sort of other things, but corn and peanuts are very predominant. In fact, there was a warning 2 years ago, in 2015, that no corn from China should be eaten because it was contaminated with aflatoxin. So aflatoxin is actually a microorganism that is derived from this mold. And we do have a very small scanner with not necessarily an amazing sensitivity in terms of the lab, but we plan on looking at the effects of the aflatoxin in the food, at the chemical structure, the chemical changes for aflatoxin in the food. And that's how we would be detecting aflatoxin in an indirect manner. This is an example of how we do it, because sometimes people say, oh, we don't understand it, or maybe this is not really true. What you see there is different gradations of a baby formula or baby milk with different levels of melamine introduced to. And what you see is a spectrum, so the near-infrared spectrum that we look at. And you see on the x-axis, you see the energy, and on the y-axis is the number of photons. And as you see, the peaks are very prevalent in between 1429 and 1538 nanometers. It's very prevalent when there is a melamine, because the NH bonds, melamine is over there, the chemical structure, have a significant expression in that range. That's how we do it. And we have this app that we're introducing in China that basically scans the milk and tells the parent it has melamine, it does not have melamine. So that's an application of big data. We also, hopefully, are starting to create a fingerprint for a recipe. This is with a large UK company. We are in discussions. How would this be used? Well, you have the food, you have your recipe for hummus, say, and hummus is with olive oil, and someone else is going to use hummus without olive oil, with some normal oil. We can detect the difference in the fats. So we can create that fingerprint and give you the control, give the restaurants and caterers and so on, cafeterias, a fingerprint of their recipe. We've done a project for Samsung, digital appliance, on the age of meat. And actually, with a scan, we can tell how old the meat is. We actually can tell something more than that. We can tell also if it is sirloin or tenderloin, and if it is cow or pork, and so on. But we actually won an award a few months ago on this project, and we made a scientific publication of this project of the meat aging. And we are right now on track to have by next year a way of determining whether or not whitefish is panga. Whitefish is a huge problem in the world with panga. Panga is a fish that is grown in Vietnam with all sorts of chemicals and antibiotics. It has no omega-3, and it's sold as if it is cod or sole or any other whitefish grouper. And this is a huge problem, especially in the southern European countries and in US. And panga has no value. In fact, it's a very poisoned fish, full of no omega-3, no value, nutritional value for us, but it's being sold at these prices. So there's a huge criminal network around this panga thing. So we are detecting right now, creating the R&D for detecting the panga, and we believe we can do it. So in the future, the data analytics there is very important. There will be a lot of information that we can derive out of these data. And this is something that came out of my mind. You're welcome to add more stuff to it, but reducing food waste, creating mechanisms for monitoring food safety at the consumer level and at the B2B level, and so on, optimizing harvest, forecasting trends in food. So you can imagine all these sensors going into the cloud with all that information, and suddenly exactly what Google is doing today for searches, we are going to be doing this for you. We're going to be able to tell you what is the next restaurant you should go because you're celiac, what is the food that you should choose, if that food is safe or not safe, and so on. Of course, there is huge problems with this, and But the problem is no different. The problem of aggregating data and selling this data is no different from what Google is doing today, or Apple is doing today, or Facebook is doing today. We have to understand what they're selling personally about us. I know there is rules, there is need for rules, but please look at the next slide to understand the benefits. Because there's huge benefits as well. And the benefits are, we're going to be able to have transparency. You know, manufacturers of food are going to give us that transparency because we're going to be able to scan. And I don't care if it says high fructose corn syrup or fructose, glucose, or syrup, I will be able to know it's high fructose corn syrup, and therefore it's linked to obesity. There's many studies linking obesity to this syrup. Okay? So we're going to be able to broaden the public involvement of the corporate responsibility that these manufacturing companies have. They all say, well, we produce great healthy snacks. But sometimes they're not healthy. And moreover, we are going to be able to personalize that diet, to look at the link between food and health, to finally prove things that there is a huge link between pesticides. There's a lot of hypotheses, a lot of research, but not a huge amount of proofs. Pesticides and Alzheimer's, pesticides and Parkinsonism, cancers that exist and grow forever in our society because they are rooted in our food. There is not enough studies on the accumulation of a certain carcinogen in our body. If we ate every day, I mean, this study is not possible to do in human beings. If we ate every day potato chips, we'd likely be accumulating that carcinogen every day. There's no study done on that. And worse yet, there's no study done on the interactions between different carcinogens. So today I eat my potato chips, and tomorrow I eat something with bisphenol A because I just bought a tin, and the tin is, with bisphenol A because of the sealing of the tin. There is no studies correlating these two carcinogens. And I'm sure they are interacting. So we're going to be able to do truly preventive medicine, but we're also going to be able to do preventive outbreaks, E. coli. We're going to be able to say, okay, we scan, that person scanned, we see E. coli, oops, there may be an outbreak there. So there is a lot of benefits for us as humans to have this type of data. It's really the implementation of how it's done, in my opinion, should always have the benefit of the humanity. Not the benefit of the greed, not the benefit of the money outcome, but the benefit of all of us. And if it's done that way, we can all grow and benefit. So, thank you very much. I invite you to come to the booth C24 and scan your food. And hopefully, you won't find melamine. Yesterday at breakfast, myself and Tina here, she was having a coffee, and she had a little dry powder milk. And I said, I wouldn't put that in your coffee. And she said, why? I said, I don't know. And she said, do you think it has melamine? Let's test it. I pulled out my scanner. We scanned it quite a few times. Guess what? It had melamine. Why? Because the hotel likely is cutting costs and outsource that milk powder from God knows where with no controls, and it has melamine. So there you go. So Tina was not very happy. She had to drink the coffee without milk, but at least she's safe. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Craig Gansel, and I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Basecamp Networks out of Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States. This is one of my favorite topics in agriculture, is big data. I come from over 20 years of building wireless networks, initially in Special Forces military in the United States, and then with a company called Verizon. When I started my company, it was about how we could build networks of the next generation for different verticals. We work in more than just agriculture. We work in mixed use and hospitality and all different kinds of verticals. And why that's important to agriculture is because if we are capturing all kinds of data in agriculture, how do we capture that? How do we capture it in any vertical? and it's from our networks. We can have the sensors in the field and devices that put off the data, but you have to have a way to get it to the cloud, and that's the connection. We have a saying at the company that connection is everything. And there's a lot of different ways to create that connection, but one of the most global standards is Wi-Fi. 802.11a, b, g, n, ac, and the future of AD, AH, and AR, Wi-Fi. All of your mobile devices and watches and tablets and laptops and desktops, they all work on Wi-Fi today. Devices in the home, devices at the office, they all work on Wi-Fi. If you went to an automotive factory, they'd have Wi-Fi. They'd have a really good network infrastructure, and there would be a lot of security, and there would be different rules and policies on the network. If you went to an office, you would find the same thing. Why don't we have it on the farm? Aren't we collecting a lot of data on the farm? Why don't we just have Wi-Fi over the farm? If all of our devices are already doing that, then why don't we have Wi-Fi on the farm? Some would say it's because of how remote it is. It's so far out away from urban area that we can't get signal out there. And that might be true, but that's being fixed in a lot of different ways. Fiber, copper, point-to-point wireless bridges, some of those that can be done upwards of 20 plus miles. So we want to put Wi-Fi infrastructure, as it would be in any other business vertical, on the farm. And that's a really good way to combat big data, because if sensors are emitting data from tractors to planters to sprayers to irrigation pivots to combines to grain bins to wireless cameras to sensors in the dirt for soil moisture to cameras or sensors in the greenhouse that are running hyperspectral color imaging on command, if all of that is talking over one unified wireless infrastructure, then you can have everything talk to each other. If you have an Apple TV or a smart TV or something at home and you lose the remote control, oftentimes there's some kind of app that you can change it with your phone. There's an app on the phone in case you lose the remote that you can use your phone as the remote control. And that's because of something called UPnP, Universal Plug and Play. That TV or that Apple TV can talk to your phone over the same wireless network. And so if we do that in agriculture, then all of the machines and devices and cameras and sensors and everything on the farm can literally talk to each other. And we can prioritize that traffic. Remember when I said in offices and in warehouses and factories, we are able to set policies and rule sets on the network? Well, that's because we have IT professionals that monitor and manage the traffic from IP addresses and MAC addresses. We can do the same thing on a farm. In the summertime, when things are really growing and everything is flourishing, and kids are off from school and they're home on the farm, and you have machines and sensors and milking dairy robotics that need priority on the network, but the kids are home and maybe they're streaming something on Netflix. Well, we can set a rule set on the network that gets a lower priority, and that your sprayer or your planter gets a higher priority. If we have things like LoRa and BLE beacon technology that just is emitting kilobytes of data on the network, but it's got to get out into the cloud so that you could be anywhere in the world literally and check in on your farm with your smartphone through an app, then we have to have a really good secure gateway to get out. And security. It's a big concern, big data, that's what we're talking about. Well, the cellular networks are really good because you can often get them in remote areas. But you're just leasing from the cellular companies. I can tell you that I spent 15 years helping to build one. I was a senior engineer for one. You're just leasing it. When you lease a network, you don't own the data. The company that owns the network owns the data. Cellular companies are some of the biggest big data producers and resellers of data in the world. That's why you pay a monthly fee to access their network. If you stop paying that monthly fee, you're not on the network anymore. They turn it off. That's why in offices and factories and so on, we build our own network. Then we own it. and we own the data on it. And we can prioritize that traffic, and we can deem where it goes, which cloud, where, how many nodes. Our company also builds a software platform using artificial intelligence and machine learning called IntelliScout that I spoke about yesterday. And we have that spread across 46 nodes around the globe, so that when I'm here in Europe, it loads that much faster than when I'm in the States or anywhere else. So we're able to dictate how we spread our traffic because of the network. And we own that data. There's a lot of controversy in the States with companies like John Deere and who owns the data on the tractors, to where they're now telling the farmers, you don't really own the right to fix your tractor. You're just leasing it from us. That's a powerful statement when you spend $500,000 on a really expensive tractor. So we're looking at the next generation of wireless mesh networks using a technology that is widespread and global today to put Wi-Fi on the farm. We have some research facilities that we put Wi-Fi up, and a single antenna can cover almost 100 acres of land. We've consulted and worked on everything from 10 acres to 110,000 in the United States. So as other people speak about big data, and as other people talk about really great technology and solutions that do everything from sensors in the ground to machinery to cameras and drones, that data all needs to get to the cloud. And this is how we feel that we should get there. This is one of the secure ways for you to build and own your own network and own all of the data on it. Thanks for having me today.
Hello, everyone. Let's see if we can get this going. So, really want to talk to you about what we're doing with Aero Farms and how we are integrating big data into our farm today. We don't have the challenges that was just highlighted in terms of what's happening out in the field. The way we grow indoors in warehouses. So just to paint a little picture, we've been doing this since 2004. We grow without sun or soil. We're able to grow all year round. Our global headquarters are based in Newark, New Jersey. And the fact is, we've built out 9 different farms over the course of the last 12 years. Our focus is on how we can expand and put these in major cities all over the world. We're mission driven. We're thinking about how we can grow responsibly, safe, nutritious, and delicious food. We talk about how do we do this. We grow indoors using aeroponics. That's the Aero in Aero Farms. We're actually growing in air. We're also growing vertically. So when we talk about vertical farming, we're trying to get as many vertical beds stacked in that space. So all of a sudden we're talking about productivity per cubic foot, not just square foot. And this is how you enable local production at scale to really be able to feed the masses and bring the farms to where the consumer is. We're using the aeroponics to deliver the nutrients in a very targeted way. We use 95% less water. And everything that we're talking about is measured, and I'll show you a little bit about how we go about and do that. But this is really where we get into the big data as well. We're using LED lights to be able to deliver the right type of spectrum of light, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So when we talk about delivering the nutrients and misting, this is what a healthy root system looks like. So here we are, and we can actually measure, we know what our water consumption is. We're actually looking at the size of that droplet, down to the micron, to be able to understand nutrient absorption by the plant, by variety, and looking at what a healthy root system looks like. And this helps us with that water efficiency, also helps us with that fertilizer efficiency. So we use 40% less fertilizer than you typically would out in the field. This is using about 30% less water than a hydroponic approach. So again, we think about what's our most judicious, most precious resource out there is fresh water. 70% of fresh water goes to agriculture. 70% of the pollution is coming from that field farming and issues with runoff. So this is a way of growing that we use less water, less fertilizer, and just as important, we use 0 pesticides. We're able to do that by controlling the entire environment from seed to package. Just talking a little bit about the lights, and so the idea that plants don't need spectrum, they don't need sunlight, they need spectrum, and so we actually understand the right spectrum, the right intensity, the right frequency, to be able to be optimizing what we call our growing algorithms. And so the light, the nutrients, the different variables that we have from environmental controls are all part of the different things that we think about. But here we can have actually more effective photosynthesis than you would have outdoors in the field. You think about it today, it's actually overcast. Yesterday was beautifully sunny just here in Milan. That kind of variability, seasonality, issues with weather. This is about how we can have a consistent growing process all year round and be able to deliver a high quality product. Things that we think about in terms of vertical farming, this is one of our farms that we have. The idea that these can be 12 levels of growing and really be able to enable that local production. Give you a sense of the variables that we're looking at. How do we harness the big data? What makes this different today than in years past? It's really the sheer volume of that data. So we're looking at the biology, the environment, the operations, and the mechanical. And by the mechanical, we're talking about our growing systems. So we've taken a little bit different path. We've actually designed all of our growing systems. And that's really important because it's that interaction between our systems, which we really think about as living computers. There's sensors, there's monitors, looking at the plants 24/7. It's the biology, thinking about the plants, how do we optimize that environment? And then we think about the operations, how do we have our workflow? How do we schedule? How do we think about food safety in new ways? And at the heart of all this is making sure we have new levels of traceability. And the data science is one of the ways that we're really harnessing this. So we think about our business, we think about how we plan, how we grow, how we sense, how we learn, and then how we adapt. It's an iterative process. So just to give you a sense, we focus on a wide rate. We can grow a wide range of different crops, but we focus specifically on baby leafy greens. It's one of the areas where we have the biggest impact. We can take that exact same seed that out in the field may take 30 to 45 days. We can grow it in 12 to 16 days because we're optimizing the environment, for that particular seed. So what does that mean? That translates up to 30 harvests a year versus just 3 that you may have out in the field. We talk about that vertical nature, being able to stack. We also talk about the fact that we can get more density per square foot. There's no weeds, there's no competition going on. So this is a way of growing that has 130 times more productivity on an annualized basis per square foot than the field farm with fewer resources. Everything we're doing is measured, and this is how we are thinking about the business. So each one of those harvests, each one of our leaves are going through, we have 160,000 data points, each one of those. We think about our business on a daily basis at the farm we were just looking at. It's 24 million data points a day. So we're talking about huge volumes of data. And this is one of the things that we think about what makes us a little bit unique and different is that understanding of this interaction in this environment. We've been growing exclusively with the LED lights since 2009. And it's this growing history that's given us a lot of information about how do we have an efficient operation and how do we have the right cost structure. So what's behind this? What's the backbone to help enable this? So we've heard about some of the different systems, the interaction. We've had to develop this on our own. So there hasn't been anything off the shelf that we could really plug and play. Again, this is a very custom approach in terms of thinking about what's specific about our needs, growing indoors, about the biology, and thinking about each of the different steps. It starts with our own core logic and database. We have an ERC system so that we're looking at, again, traceability. We're looking at all the inputs, managing those costs, managing inventory. The sensors we talked about in terms of helping give us a lot of the data, our growing room, growing system. We're tracking our growing trays. This is what we're calling, so each one of our trays are 5 feet by 2.5 feet, and this is the growing unit that gets passed through the different stages of seeding, of germination, of growing, harvesting, and then ultimately that tray gets cleaned and gets reprocessed. So what this means, though, is we have greater visibility than ever before. If there's an incident out in the field, you may say, there was an incident in this particular hectare or this particular region. We can get right down to the square foot. We can trace back, again, what were those inputs, what was the seed, what was the fertilizer used, what were the environmental factors. So it's giving us a new level of sight in how we think about how we ensure a better approach to food safety. One of the things that at the heart of this, though, is, again, how do we think about an efficient workflow? Again, we think about how do we be very efficient with our labor when we do scheduling, when we do any of our different growing cycles. And at the end, it's about how we can do just-in-time growing for our selling partners. So the fact is, we can grow in 12 to 16 days. This is actually faster than a typical retailer would write their ad program. So this is really being able to collaborate in a very different way with the selling partners and be able to establish a very different dynamic. One of the challenges they have today, they typically make commitments. They run an ad, run an in-store promotion, and then there's no product, right? Some sort of weather issue, some sort of availability, some sort of distribution issue. Well, we're doing just-in-time growing, working closely with them. So what does this mean? It means greater sales for them, there's no opportunity lost sales, and so this is a better way of helping them grow the entire category. And produce alone is just such a strategic category for retailers in terms of frequency and visit, in terms of your market basket. And so retailers are really vested in making sure that they have a partner that can help work with them. Oops. The idea that it's being monitored 24/7, so there's the sensors, but there's people behind this, right? It's not just a black box. And so that's what I think really gives us a little bit of a different insight as well in terms of how we're doing it. So of course you have data, but unless you have insights, the data is meaningless. And yes, you have people reacting. So there's a lot of science, but there's a lot of art in terms of understanding, and again, how to interpret it, how to manage it. And so we have deep level of expertise in our organization, from the plant scientists, the crop physiologists, the plant pathologists, the engineers, lighting engineers, industrial engineers, mechanical engineers, all the way thinking through food safety, microbiologists, we have nutritionists on staff, thinking through that entire process of how we manage it and making sure that the whole team is integrated, from operations to how we think about fulfilling this order. We have a very in-depth HACCP plan, food safety. We have over 130 different standard operating procedures on how to run a farm, making it very systematic. We think about, again, redefining from seed to package. How do we take that and elevate that to a higher level? The boxes are intentionally grayed out to talk about the specific steps, but the idea from receiving to shipping, everything is very carefully mapped out. And this is so critical. This is one of the things that we think is really important for the overall industry of indoor farming, but just farming overall. We can't afford to have any kind of incident or outbreak. And so this is one of the areas that we really invest heavily on, and we think it's really important to be able to help give that reassurance, not only to our selling partners, but ultimately to the end consumer. This is to give you a sense of the kind of work and the kind of team that we have behind. This is a simulation of one of our growing towers. How do we use this data? This is a real simulation of looking at optimization. So the idea that we can use the data for quality, we can use it for food safety, we can use it for workflow and operations. We can actually do and run scenarios based on prior data, think about how do we drive and increase utilization. And again, this is all about how we drive and make sure we have the right economics and cost structure to be competitive in the marketplace today. And then the power of the data. So I mentioned just one farm is 24 million data points a day. Just imagine as this multiplies across multiple farms, multiple years, multiple different regions. It's an opportunity to really stay ahead of the curve, understand, again, how to optimize the plants. And we think about how do we optimize the plants, it's a real big focus on, again, how we optimize, not just for yield, which is really important for the business model, but we talk about quality. So we talk about taste, we talk about texture, we talk about nutrition, we talk about even color. So all those different components we're looking at and thinking about how do we optimize. And the data is so critical. A typical horticulture meeting looks like a statistics meeting, right? We're looking at data constantly, understanding what's happening on day 2, what's going to happen on day 4, what's going to happen on day of 12 of the harvest, to be able to understand, again, where we are in that process and be able to ensure the right kind of quality. This idea that we're redefining agriculture, so we're leveraging technology, we're doing machine vision, we're doing imaging, we're doing modeling. We can use all this for predictive health indicators. So this is an example with ruby streak mustard greens of what it looks like in different stages and things that we're doing to map it out. And this is something that we're doing, again, constantly to be able to have an understanding. And at the end of the day, it's about how do we deliver a better product, right? This is what this is all focused on, something the consumers are really going to enjoy, really be able to have a very flavorful experience and have the reassurance that it's done in a very safe way. And then ultimately how it shows up on shelf in the package and really be able to have a differentiated product in the marketplace. So that's how we're using big data to be able to drive a better product, better system, and a better value. All right, thanks.
Hi, I'm Raja Ramachandran, co-founder of Ripe.io, and after hearing some of these really excellent presentations about the future of agriculture and and real things like taste and nutrition, and taking the complexity in the food system and being able to bring it out in real terms for real outcomes for real people. Talk today a little bit about utilizing a newer technology, a distributed ledger technology that forms the backbone of what's called blockchain. And we'll talk a little bit about how Ripe utilizes the blockchain to be able to absorb data from multiple sources, whether it's the field, the truck, to the receiving dock, to the kitchen, and ultimately how that it presents itself in terms of real outcomes for people. So, our food system. You got a nice sense from the last 3 presentations about how disparate it is. It's broken up into things along the lines of the field, the varying different players within each of the infrastructures that are out there, whether it's the trucking company, whether it's the warehouse, whether it's the ethylene ripening system, whatever it might be. So these are the elements that all comprise ultimately what's almost magical, which is the delivery of your food to the kitchen. So in that sense, the blockchain is meant to actually connect each of these elements, even if they're either vertically integrated, like Mark's company, for example, but also separate entities all the way around. And in between all of that are words, and we'll talk a little bit about what that means. In other words, there's data, but that data needs rationalization. It needs a commonality, it needs a language in which you're able to go ahead and create that insight that you ultimately want to get. So for example, in our case, we actually take these words and this data, and we look for requests, say, for a better tomato. So in that sense, it's interesting. Food, right? It has mass, it's organic matter. It has shape, it has color, it has smell, all these things. But the reality of food often is just it's a wall of words. These words all comprise some kind of element that defines the curation through its ultimate consumption. So in that sense, we take a look at this, it's almost like a semantic web or an ontology, and then we took it and said, well, what happens to tomatoes? What are the important sets of data that will actually curate, say, a really good tasting tomato, an acidic one, whatever it would be, so that you have an ability to recommend it to the type of food that you're looking for. So in that sense, the blockchain, what it really allows you to do is capture all of this different data. These are records that are actually pasted onto a ledger. These ledgers have the participants in the network validate them. So in other words, as you make an assertion or a claim that this is how I plant, this is these tomatoes actually were on the high part of the stem, not the low, got more sun, so it's a more sugary tomato and so on. So those types of things are placed into the blockchain network so that you can get consensus out of it. And so what happens is you get a story. You get a narrative where you can look at things like taste. Well, what actually comprises taste? It's all these different data elements, and that forms the part of this infrastructure that creates this big data piece. Traceability, sustainability, moisture, whatever it might be, they all have really a trace of a number of input factors that get you there. So when we look at the blockchain, it allows you to take in all of this disparate information. You can actually automate a number of different things so that if you wanted to achieve sustainability goals, a grocery store said, I would like to increase all my purchases for everything within 50 miles. I'd like to have this level of certification as a part of it. I want this as a shelf life. You actually can take this data, put it together, and automate that capability so that it results in their ordering system. And so in that sense, we look at all of these different data points as a way to combine and correlate so that you actually get real outcomes. So in that sense, what we do today, in two senses, we actually place sensors in the field. We put sensors that capture light, humidity, temperature as a basic. We also have soil sensors, and we're partnering with a couple of companies that do this type of work. And in essence, what happens is it begins to interconnect that food system that you saw. And so in that sense, you get the history of the growth of a particular tomato, say. What it yields you, or what it does for you as an entity, is it really allows us to have actionable analysis. So in that sense, you can take a hard look at things like, When you get the information that provides, say, temperature readings, wind direction, soil composition, and so on, you get that back to the farmer or the grower. And in a way, they have that inherently as part of their model. They know it intuitively. But the reality is, this gives them factual sets of data that get corroborated with other farmers, other growers. And so over different regions, you get a better composition of the actual data analytics itself. Proof of origin, authenticity, transparency. Large food growers are vertically integrated, say like a Nestle, and so from the perspective, they own, say, 20-25% of their supply chain. But it's the other 75-80% that they don't have good standards and record keeping and the ability to actually trace down some levels of authenticity, whether it's beans, whey, whatever it might be. Better food. How is it that we define that? Well, it'll be defined by the buyers, whether it's a grocery store, whether it's a kitchen, franchise, whatever it might be. But it's built on things around nutrition, taste, obviously. And then ultimately, we look at things like risk. How do you reduce risk in it, whether it's spoilage, whether it's bacterial problems, and so on. And so, again, you've probably heard time and time again about how it is that you use the data. How do you correlate? How do you create insight? And in the end, this is the system that we think that will do that. So as an example, sustainability. Well, how is it that you define such a thing? Well, it begins with the words. And with those words, you have a common language in which you're actually tagging data that you can use something as a high level like sustainability, but it can be tagged and utilized in the energy business. It could be used as government policy. It could be used in a whole series of things that are not just exactly related to the buyer or the food. So you have to get chemical inputs, water quality, et cetera. And there's a whole host of other things. Food safety. So for example, here, we look at this as more of a reporting function. In the US, Barack Obama's administration put together FSMA, and there's a whole series of certifications and validations you have to follow through. So again, it's capturing information in the supply chain that allows you to go ahead and manage a lot of these components. Traceability, we heard, I think Mark and others talk about it. Traceability is a very, very important element so that it creates a true transparency of what you receive and where did it come from, and how it is that you understand that so-called development. Traceability is quite hard, because in the sense is that a piece of fruit may get tagged at the grower level, gets tagged by the distributor, and then it gets tagged by, say, the grocer. And so all of a sudden you've got three different systems that you need to reconcile and integrate so that you can get a full see-through in terms of your traceability. So there's some things about the blockchain that could help bring that together. Taste. This is probably one of the more important parts of all food. Again, taste is one of those magical things that everyone experiences. But the reality is you can actually codify it. You can get a sense of actually what comprises a particular flavor set, whether it's sweet, whether it's acidic, sour, whatever it might be. And so in that sense, it's important to capture all the chemistry that goes through. So like Isabel's company that has spectrometry readings and hyperspectral analysis, you can get really granular about the chemistry and the makeup of food. And so in that sense, that data capture is extremely important. In the future, we want to be able to go ahead and tie all of this to nutrition, to health, because that's clearly one of the bigger goals in the long run, is to be able to have true and healthy food. So in this sense, these are a little bit more difficult data components to actually pick up. But if you look at tomatoes, you certainly want to look at things like lycopene, what's the calorie makeup, what are the vitamins that are associated with it, and so on. And so in that sense, again, as we start to dig further into this domain of information, you have to actually go back to the words, the data, and the variables that actually comprise such a thing. So, at Ripe.io, all of this is embedded in what we call a scorecard. So the idea is that you have this matrix in which the buyer, a grocery store, can actually look at something like this and say, all right, I need to fulfill on a particular regulatory report. I need all these grapes to taste in a certain way. I definitely want to buy more local. I'd like to see what trip did the actual pallets take, for example. What's the shelf life that I'm looking for? In other words, what's the most ripe and opportune time in which to be able to go ahead and sell these items. And so in that sense, we take in data from whoever the provider would be, and then help provide consensus or trust around it so that ultimately you get the outcomes. So for the farmer, right, they're looking for things like outcomes on, well, if I curate really well, I have almost like an intravenous drip system that's curated water, and I grow the best mandarin oranges, why don't I get premium prices for it? You know, and so there's always that battle of pricing going to zero because everybody thinks of it as a commodity, or at least big purchasers. The other part is, you know, they definitely look at more traditional things about yield, reducing waste, but also is their curation process tied to, is it true? A lot of farmers have great intuition and great records about how it is that they farm, but in this sense, there's a visibility back to what they do. For the grocery store, a lot of times, take a Whole Foods, for example, right? They're trying to assure folks with their own levels of certification and ensuring that, that the supply chain fulfills on a lot of the conditions that they want to create for healthier product. For the consumer, these narratives, and these are all stories that we were talking about a little bit earlier, right? From that perspective, we can feed systems, whether they're mobile apps that's run by a grocery store, your local restaurant, large franchises, and so on. And so in that sense, they can take all of this data, repackage it in a way that the consumers really feel informed, have transparency, and can trust it. So in that sense, big data, you know, is a combination and then a funneling of that into the appropriate sort of end user like experience. And so we want to be able to go ahead and do that. In terms of transportation, we try to reduce the risk about what's happening in transport. What are the conditions? You know, do they take the extra 200 miles to get there, for example? So in that sense, all of this is embedded in this automated capability. And through the scorecard and something what's called smart contracts, you can actually automate and enable a lot of these outcomes as part of a system. So to sort of like summarize, the blockchain of food, we believe, is a series of just digitization of data, but it's real, right? It's real food, it's real activity, it's real motion, it's the living conditions in which we all have. That gets funneled into this ledger system that we try to create some consensus around the entirety of the data itself, the assertions and the claims, and then ultimately they get used as a way that you can actually automate and manage the systems to create better outcomes for your food. And so with that, I thank you very much.
Buonasera a tutti. In CAMST crediamo che il food sia una food experience individuale. Con 4 elementi: c'è il prodotto, cioè la lista degli ingredienti, della materia prima e la tecnica per realizzarlo. C'è la nutrizione, quindi quello che vado a cercare dal prodotto, vegano, proteine, dieta mediterranea, tutto lo storytelling intorno al prodotto, molto importante, la promessa, l'aspettativa e naturalmente la sicurezza, ultimo ma non meno importante. Siamo quello che mangiamo, la sicurezza è importantissima. Chi realizza questo prodotto magico di 4 elementi? È una persona, è lo chef o il cuoco, oppure è una catena, è un brand. C'è un trust, ci affidiamo a qualcuno. Il food è la nostra sicurezza. Noi siamo CAMST, produciamo 115 milioni di food experience individuali ogni anno, individuali. Lo facciamo dal 45, nelle scuole, nelle aziende, negli ospedali, nei locali commerciali. Siamo in 13.000 persone per fare questi numeri, quasi 1.000 fra cuochi e chef, 200 fra persone che si occupano di nutrizione, dietisti, tecnici di qualità degli alimenti. Siamo ossessionati da 3 elementi: la qualità, la trasparenza e la sicurezza. Come facciamo a garantire al consumatore, al nostro cliente, questi 3 elementi? Perché la qualità è nel prodotto, la trasparenza è nel rapporto fra di noi, la sicurezza è un fatto importantissimo per entrambi. Come la gestiamo questa ossessione che abbiamo? Come garantiamo al cliente? Lo facciamo con i dati, con le informazioni. Del cliente sappiamo tutto, abbiamo il CRM, carte fedeltà, firmiamo appalti, abbiamo 450 appalti pubblici firmati che sono molto rigidi e dobbiamo fare esattamente quello che dicono. Siamo un'azienda che fa 600 milioni di euro di fatturato, quindi abbiamo tracciabilità, abbiamo RFID, abbiamo tutta la tecnologia che esiste sul mercato. Da un po' di tempo anche sugli allergeni è cambiato tantissimo, quindi dobbiamo collezionare tantissime informazioni. Io mi occupo di acquisti, quindi il lavoro che devo fare io col mio staff è quello di negoziare prodotti, quantità, tutto il tempo sul prezzo. Non è più così, facciamo completamente altro. L'anno scorso, proprio il 10 maggio, qui a Milano abbiamo lanciato un evento con i 100 fornitori più importanti, li abbiamo invitati, abbiamo, come dire, spostato il paradigma, abbiamo cambiato quello che è la relazione fra di noi. Chiedo di mandare un video di 1 minuto che vi racconta un attimo che cosa è successo quel giorno.
Ogni giorno, da oltre 70 anni, Kamst compie una meravigliosa magia. Sceglie eccellenti materie prime e le lavora con dovizia e sapienza. Questo incantesimo genera energia per il futuro, offrendo nutrimento alle nuove generazioni.
Prima di tutto, siamo un'azienda fatta di persone, con oltre 13.000 lavoratori a livello di gruppo. Dobbiamo garantire alle generazioni future la solidità patrimoniale di questa azienda.
Cos'è l'innovazione di tipo relazionale? È l'innovazione di cui discutiamo oggi in questo premio. Mettere insieme le capacità di chi presidia le filiere a monte con le capacità di chi presidia il contatto con il cliente.
Voi siete qui per un motivo molto semplice, ma molto importante. Voi siete i nostri fornitori strategici. Siete le 100 aziende importanti per Kamst.
Tutto questo che si produce anche per il bene delle persone, si produce se c'è alla base un forte lavoro di squadra, cioè se quello che stiamo cercando di fare qui questa sera poi riesce ad avere una continuazione quotidiana, perché solo lavorando insieme si riesce a ottenere risultati.
Li abbiamo invitati, li abbiamo chiamati, li abbiamo premiati. Non succede mai, i fornitori vengono chiamati per essere strozzati, ma anche noi siamo fornitori, siete tutti fornitori. Ha creato veramente un volano eccezionale nella relazione, anche perché noi ora li screstiamo tantissimo proprio sui numeri. Abbiamo creato una piattaforma di dati, abbiamo raccolto 100.000 informazioni che non sono informazioni di carattere legale, cioè chiediamo tanto di più perché vorremmo comunicare ad ogni consumatore, e sono migliaia, decine di migliaia, quello che vogliono sapere del prodotto finale. Abbiamo creato una startup interna, abbiamo assunto 4 ragazzi molto giovani, abbiamo lanciato questo DB Tender, che è una piattaforma di dati che ci scambiamo con i fornitori. Ci stiamo divertendo veramente ad andare veramente in fondo al prodotto, da dove nasce, di cosa è fatto e tutto il racconto che c'è dietro. Le informazioni sono tantissime. L'idea è di scambiare questi dati con il cliente a vari livelli, non possiamo prendere un database con 100.000 informazioni e passarlo ai nostri clienti, ma ognuno deve entrare in contatto come vuole, in maniera più superficiale o più approfondita, con noi. Questa è trasparenza. Abbiamo cominciato nei nostri locali commerciali con delle app, con tablet, video e il riscontro è ottimo. Nella ristorazione commerciale o collettiva non c'è questo, siamo stati i primi. Vediamo che c'è un riscontro molto molto buono, c'è interesse, non è più soltanto un'etichetta, ma le persone del prodotto vogliono arrivare veramente a dove è nato, a capire dove è nato. La prossima sfida che ci siamo dati è quello veramente di capire, infatti un po' siamo anche qui per capire come fare a comunicare con i nostri clienti in maniera diversa, perché non possiamo appunto passare dei database, non vengono ai nostri locali commerciali, alcuni sono clienti molto particolari, sono aziende, sono clienti pubblici, come facciamo a gestire queste informazioni che sono un grandissimo valore, però loro ancora non lo sanno. E vi ringrazio.
Thanks for staying. Guess you all like big data. Or is it data? So we're Centaur. We develop sensors and solutions in the Internet of Things, specifically for the abundance and quality of harvested crops. So at Center, we're all about safe, abundant food, which is a fundamental human right. Yesterday, at President Obama's excellent keynote, we heard that we're wasting about 1/3, maybe more, of our annual production across all kinds of crops. Elsewhere, this has been estimated to correspond to a waste from our economy equal to $1 trillion each year. This is a staggering amount. This is a daunting statistic. So what can we do to reverse this statistic? There's really two things we can do, really. One of them is produce more, enter precision agriculture, which, however, has some unestimated and unpredictable ramifications to global warming, as we also heard yesterday. The other thing we can do is make sure we waste less. How are we wasting? Where is the wasteful journey? Where does it begin? It really begins after harvest, and it's due to the fact that we cannot really control the environment. We cannot control the conditions of storage and transportation of our precious harvests. So temperature will fluctuate, humidity, moisture of product is variable, and of course, as part of our ecosystem, we have pests and insects that will affect the quality of stored crops. Now, we know from our customers in the grain milling sector, for instance, that typically a nominal 5, maybe 10% in some cases, is wasted in their grains as they sit in silos, as they sit in grain bins. You know why? Because kernels of grain are being eaten up by insects and are converted to powder, which is useless. You cannot convert powder to flour. So, and that has been tolerated. So how can we go about changing this? Let me give you the Internet of Crops. What is this really? It's a big data platform. We have a system which can collect, aggregate information, among other sources, from weather stations, from user parameters, from harvesting. Ideally, this could connect to a precision ag system and take useful initial conditions such as product moisture directly from such a database and use it. And more importantly, our Internet of Crops platform uses data streams from our own sensors that Center is designing and installing. Why do we do all that? We actually produce insights and we actually produce actionable information for our end users. We can start telling you what the safe storage time for your stored crops is on bin number 15. We can provide as a notification to your cell phone a real-time spoilage detection alert. More importantly, we can enable cognitive pest management and prescriptive pest treatment, specializing in fumigation with the application of the chemical known as phosphine, which is very efficient against insects if used in a big data context. So let me qualify the cognitive and prescriptive character of our solution. A cognitive system is a system that can learn from the data it produces or consumes. A cognitive system can learn from the behavior of its users. And that's exactly what our system does. It can monitor and understand what a successful pest treatment is in a given silo, warehouse, or shipping container, and can help the user repeat that successful treatment and avoid wasteful practices that unfortunately have been the norm in this industry. Now, to do all that, we rely on our sensors. So we had to develop technology which really works from the inside out, being able to report data such as gas concentrations, temperature, and humidity from inside the storage areas, from inside those metal bins and those shipping containers and those confined spaces inside crop warehouses. So part of our technology is really on how to wirelessly transmit the relevant data from bulk product and from those storage areas. And now our crop sensors work on a number of crops today. They are applied along with our data analytics to grains and rice, non-edible products such as tobacco, hemp, and herbs, coffee and cocoa, dried fruit and nuts. Let me give you a quick tour of our data platform. Presumably you have sensors like this guy installed in your facility, or maybe not. But what you can do to start is you define what your storage facility looks like, what types of crops you have on storage, and what the location of this facility is, which is important to, as a second step, connect this to weather data, local in your area, and also sensors, if you have them. We can use temperature sensors, humidity sensors, and our own special ones that, as I said before, they can also detect gas concentrations in real time. Having done that, you can directly obtain quality and spoilage predictions. You can get to safe storage time predictions. You can get to other very important metrics, such as dry matter loss, which applies to grains. And the third step is really doing this in real time, is recording all the information which our system does and prescribing, as I mentioned before, pest treatments and receiving alerts and notifications. So it's really a simple step 1, 2, 3 process which sits on the cloud and uses and consumes information from the weather and from our own sensors. Now this system is trusted by industry leaders. At this year's Seeds and Chips, we were happy to announce our partnership with a leader in stored product protection, Dedia Degish. They produce the chemical phosphine, the best brand of phosphine out there, and they partnered with my company, with Centaur, to be able to use in actual fumigations our sensors and our data analytics and actually help us resell the solution to their end users worldwide. Of course, we have some customers that have worked with us since we started this, since we conceived this idea back in 2014. So, for instance, Asopos Mills in Greece have been using our sensors and our data platform for monitoring their finished products, their flour, and before shipping to retail. That helped them improve the success rates they had in pest elimination from a substandard 70% all the way up to 99.9%, which basically ensures pristine quality product. And that came not at a cost, but actually it came at cost savings because it helped them recoup some waste they had from excess chemicals and from labor that they don't have now, they don't need to expend. What you can do is you can join us today. You can join our data platform at beta.center.ag. It's still under beta, but it's way more advanced than the typical user experience of a beta. As I mentioned, it's used in practice by industry leaders as we speak. What you can do is, even without having a sensor, is you can try out our data analytics, you can try out our crop spoilage algorithms, and of course provide feedback to us which would be valuable in helping us shape the technology that will help us eliminate waste for future generations. Thank you very, very much.